Alright, so this isn't a progress video, this is actually a guide. I don't do too many guides, but I had the idea and I had someone in mind, and there's a few people waiting for this guide, so without further ado, here is the first ever colorblind Zulrah guide. So chances are, if you've been looking for my guide, you've probably seen this and found it completely useless being colorblind. So let's just scrap that image altogether and get on with my guide. Alright, so if you're colorblind and you know me, and I know you, then chances are I'm thinking of you as I make this. Another reason I'm making this is to demonstrate that it is quite possible to take on Zulrah without any sort of color cues at all. There are plenty of environmental cues, which is what we're going to be focusing on once we get into the guide. But first, let's do some rambling about color and perception. But real quick, before we get into the guide itself, timestamp below in the description if you want to just jump there, or I'll pin a comment too, whatever. I want to talk some philosophy for a little bit because I actually wasn't planning on logging in last night, story time, and I logged in anyway to grab my battle stabs and whatnot, and I ran into Slayer Music, who was grinding a bank stand skill out over at the Crafting Guild, and I ended up chatting him up for a little while, and we got into a rather deep philosophical conversation about color perception, which actually eventually relates back to the whole Zulrah guide in general. Now, I bet you've probably seen this image before. Now, some of you see three different colors here. Those of you who are color confused like I am, you probably see three different colors here, but we might not all call them the same colors. I told Slayer Music I wasn't colorblind. I'm actually color confused, which there's a little bit of a difference there. It's like a slight color blindness or something. I guess I don't have as many cones of one receptor in my eyes or something like that. I don't know. I never got like medically examined. But at any rate, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to color perception. So let's just start out with the basics. What is color? Well, color is light, and it's a light at a particular wavelength. So a photon that's vibrating a particular way, and that gets picked up by your rod or cone, turned into an electrical signal, and then goes through all your nerves in your eyes till it hits the back of your brain. Well, actually, it goes through some pathways in the brain, but it ends up going to the very back of your head, the occipital lobe, and light never actually hits that. It's just like an electrical impulse. So color is how electricity tickles your neuron in a particular way after interacting with the rods and cones in your eyeball. And then we look at how language works, and language is just sounds that relate to particular things that are shared experiences. When I say blue, you think of things that you've seen and described as blue, or things that you've seen that other people have told you is blue, but nobody really knows what blue really looks like. One thing that Slayer Music pointed out is that my blue sky might actually be purple, and your blue sky might be true blue, and somebody else's might be a different color, and we all might be seeing different shades of different color. That's why there's so many preferences in artwork and color design and all these variations in the art world. Well, with that 1 minute rant out of the way, cut a little short there because this is a guide, not a philosophy video. I just figured I'd toss 2 cents in the wishing well. Let's take some colors out of this picture. So let's play with the color balance, and I'm about to take the green straight out of this picture. So Zulrah might look like this if you are colorblind to green. Alright, now let's go back to baseline, and now I'm going to take out the red. So with red color blindness, you can still see a few differences. But what if you're a type of colorblind called red-green colorblind? Now, I believe this is the most common type of color blindness. So if you're colorblind, this is probably what Zulrah looks like. and quite frankly, I don't blame you for not being able to kill it. So I'll go back to normal after each color, sort of like a saltine cracker when you're tasting wine. Blind to blue, back to normal. Blind to blue and green combined, back to normal. Red, blue, color blindness, back to normal. Also, compared to normal, this is how color confused might look, which is what I might be seeing. Now, one of the main reasons I go through that is for the non-colorblind folks watching this guide, because if you're colorblind, you probably already kind of know this. You've been through color tests and things of that nature before, and you see things that look the same and you match them up. And if you were to, juxtapose all of those little images and see that there's two that look exactly alike, then you might just be colorblind, but that might not also be the case. They might all look different, even to a colorblind person in terms of juxtaposition, because this camera or your monitor can't really accurately depict what color blindness is or how another person perceives. That's just, what a computer looks like, a computerized image looks like, with all the green pixels taken out, with all the red pixels taken out, etc., etc. So it's not a perfect match, but it's good for a conceptualization if you're not familiar with color blindness. So I figured I'd just, go through that, because also this whole deal with color perception and the fact that some of us see different colors than other people, it's really mind-blowing. And also, I'd like to not call it color blindness, because, what if we were all red-green colorblind? Then red and green would just be wavelengths of light that were imperceptible, sort of like radiation or something like that. We can't perceive that. It'd be like imagining a new color, sort of. Try to imagine a new color, come up with one. It's impossible, you can't. Sort of like how you can't explain what color even is to someone who's been cortically blind since birth. They just don't have a concept for that. It's just a foreign, abstract thing, sort of like explaining to one of us how different types of radiation look, like how infrared heat waves look compared to a different type of wavelength, because we don't see those either, so we have nothing to base that off of. The only true wavelength that we see are, the visible light spectrum, that rainbow, and then the other waves around are sound waves that our ears pick up, and that's a whole nother can of worms. So with all of that said, this leads me to a very hard decision to make, and that is how to make this guide visually. Should I make it black and white, or should I make it normal and you can just go off of that? Now, I also considered making two guides, one that was in black and white and one that's in normal color. And in the end, I decided that it would be best to just have the normal color, so when you go to Zulrah, you'll be, expecting certain colors in certain places if you're only color confused or not that severely colorblind, or any variation of seeing different colors in what the majority of the population sees. However you want to word that. This is going to be a very long guide. Alright, let's get started. We have just barely not even hit the 9-minute mark, and we're only just beginning. Also, I won't really be going over gear setups or things like that. I'll save that for other guides so that they're still relevant out there. I'll put some links into the description area so that you can find what gear setup matches you if you are just starting your Zulrah grind. Real quick, one thing I forgot about that I figured I'd stick in the front here is that you'll want to use magic when the snake is in ranged phase, meaning that the snake is ranging you, you are using magic. And you want to mage the snake when it is melee stage. When it's meleeing you, or trying to, and you're dodging it, then you'll want to be using magic on it when you can, in between the dodges. And then finally you'll want to use ranged on the magic phase. One of these, one of these, one of these, one of these, 5 of these, 3 of these, 5 more of these, 2 of these. And then do my pre-pot, bank that, grab 2 of those, and then roll. All kills start the same. You can flick Mystic Might at your will. It's not really necessary, but I like to though, just to keep in the practice of it. Always hover over range next, because that's the only one that can hit you. This is just the meleeer. And you know this because it spawns in the middle, right here. Center of the horseshoe. I'm going to assume you know mostly mechanics, but after he strikes, I do one more hit, then switch to ranged to get ready for the magic phase. Spam click them before you get over to the cloud, otherwise you'll run into it. And then next is the range phase. At this point, you'll want to pay attention to exactly what Zulrah does next. If Zulrah venoms the area in front of you first, it will be a magic phase next. Here, Zulrah spawned snakelings before she venomed, therefore it's a melee phase now. Now, if your map's on stealth like mine is, following this melee phase will be a magic phase on the right hand side of you. So this is the second magic phase of this particular rotation. What you'll want to do knowing this is run over to the left hand side of the arena. Prayers don't actually matter. You can leave Protect from Magic on after the phase is over and you're on the next one, because this Zulrah phase does not shoot at you. It is what I'd like to call an environmental phase. Let's get ready to catch Avenge. All the snakelings are dead, so I'm going to cast that and get my blowpipe specs off. Unfortunately, I didn't get a hit, and that was a wasted Venge. But the Venge should be healed up by the next time. Now, since it's this rotation, I need to pray Mage next. Ooh, that was a big hit. So right there, I actually did everything right except for eating. I should have ate a little higher because this isn't a safe HP to sit at. However, you do want to be on Protect from Mage, because the magic phase does randomly range you, and there's even the ability to time Vengeance right and stack it up as you see it coming. Now unfortunately it ranged me a few times in a row, which caused me to die, and activated that really cool perk for the Western Province Diaries, which resurrected me. Anyway, on with the kill. That was a combo. That is how you get comboed out. Try not to let that happen. Now, for the sake of guide accuracy, say you don't get the kill that quick and it goes one more phase. What's the next phase? Well, the next phase following this particular magic phase will always be a Jad phase on the right-hand side of you. And the Jad phase on the western side, the right-hand side, when you're facing south, will start with a ranged attack and then alternate between magic and range. A few hits in, you're going to want to start making your way north, because it will cover the whole area in Venom except for one square on the north right hand side of the horseshoe. And then will be a melee phase that will force you to step into Venom. And if you still haven't managed to kill it, then will be another ranged phase, and it should die this phase, otherwise you're gonna be out of food. Alright, so moving on to our next type of rotation. This one is going to be similar. You'll want to probably watch back the first one and compare it to this one, because this one also has a melee phase as the first phase change. Alright, so I don't actually have game sounds for this one, but like all kills, you'll want to start out going on the boat, turning on Mystic Might, and then killing this phase, the environmental phase. That's what we'll call it when it doesn't do anything in terms of combat. And like all kills, get ready to protect from range just in case, but like I said, it is a melee phase for the second phase of this rotation. And whenever it's a melee phase, it's going to be a magic phase next, which is when you'll want to run over here, do your switch, spam click it, and hopefully attack it before you reach the Venom Cloud. If you do reach the Venom Cloud early, then you will have to move a square to get out of it. Now, just like before, you're going to want to switch to protect from ranged at the end of this phase, because we don't know what the next phase is going to be yet. But so far, this is exactly the same as the last rotation, until now. Here it spawns to the right hand side of us and starts spitting venom immediately. This means that it's going to be a magic phase to the south next, and you can switch back to protect from magic early to negate some damage from the snakelings, and it's also going to be the magic phase which you range. And then you work your way over to the left side of the horseshoe, the eastern side, and you can keep protect from mage on for quite a while here. You'll want to run back a little early as it venoms. You'll miss a couple hits, great time to eat up, heal some health, and then it's a melee phase. And you dodge this one just like normal, and then following this phase will be a ranged phase to the left of you. You can switch to pray ranged early during that if you would like, and you might just take some damage from the snakelings in return for that. But following this short phase, you'll want to protect from magic and run to the west, because this is a magic phase, and use your ranged gear, of course, for the magic phase. And now this is where it's similar to the other kill, because after you run from east to west with a magic phase at the south side of the horseshoe, it's a Jad Phase next, and he starts or she starts with ranged. I don't know what gender Zulrah is. Does anyone know?
Like Foggy, dude, I don't know.
Yeah, and you just go about the Jad Phase, and then after this Jad Phase will be a melee phase right in the middle. And following that will be another ranged phase, by which time you should definitely have the kill in the bag, unless you haven't been dealing enough damage to the snake throughout the duration of the fight. So let's move on to our third type of rotation. This one will be one where a magic phase spawns as the first chain. So without further ado, let's get right into it. As normal, pre-venge, pre-pot, everything you need to do, and start the normal fight. And this time, you'll know that it's a magic phase, because when the snake pops up, you'll be ready to pray range just in case. You might even want to turn it on if you're colorblind, but the snake doesn't hit you right away if it is indeed a magic phase. Instead, it'll start spawning snakelings. This will give you time to react. If it hits you immediately, it's a ranged phase. If it starts spawning snakelings and shit, then it's a magic phase, which will be followed by a southern environmental phase, at which you should run to the west side of the horseshoe, the western leg of it. And this will spawn smoke clouds or venom clouds immediately. And this goes back to the first clip of the video, the first rotation, where I said if you've got a green phase to the south, pay attention to what Zulrah does next, because even if you forget what phase you're on at this point, you know that it's going to be a magic phase next when Zulrah spawns smoke clouds right in front of you, and the snake will not spawn any new snakelings. the snake will only venom those 3 squares, pop under very quickly, and transition to magic phase. This one can be a little bit tricky to get a hang of because it happens a lot quicker than the other phases, but the magic phase does not start attacking you right away, so you've got a little bit of time to prepare while it spawns some snakelings. So after you've had a environmental phase, to the south, instantly spawn venom right next to you, followed by that magic phase. You will have a melee phase right in the middle of the horseshoe following this. Again, your prayers don't matter for the melee phase. You can dodge it or stand next to the pillars to negate its hits, and then following this will be a ranged phase. Some people like to pray magic for the snakelings up until the ranged phase happens, but you don't really need to get ready for that until these venom clouds show up. Also, notice how that one venom cloud was delayed. Let's see that again. This can be a good indicator to you that after this range phase will be an environmental phase, followed by a mage phase. So you can go ahead and turn protect from magic on and not have to worry about switching your prayers for a little while. But still get ready to switch your gear after the environmental phase if it's not dead here, because it will be a magic phase. Now, just a tip for those that do have some sort of color perception out there, it will be the same color twice. The ranged phase, like you see right here, then the environmental phase, which is in the middle, covered by smoke or venom, and you want to wait till the venom cloud disappears to run, and then the magic phase. So for this rotation, watch that back, look where the glitchy venom cloud is. That's going to be an important cue unless JJX fixes that. And just by that cue, you know where you are and what's next. No knowledge of color needed. Alright, so moving on with the next type of rotation. Let's find a clip where it starts as a ranged phase as its first change. Also, if you made it this far, it's a good time to like the video and maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I said before I don't do many guides, but I have a lot of videos. Alright, so from the top, you enter the boat, typical startup to everything, just like every kill. Get ready to pray ranged, just in case it's a ranged phase, which it actually is this time. And like last phase, if you're colorblind, you'll want to pray ranged as soon as you see that, and determine whether it hits you or whether it spawns snakelings. Here, it is most definitely hitting me, so I am keeping my prayer up and on range while I mage the snake. Now, as soon as it starts spawning snakelings, I immediately start running and prepare for the melee phase. And to prepare for this phase, I just run all the way to the most northern part of the right-hand horseshoe and do the dodges just like normal, and I keep my protect from magic up for the snakelings, and because next is going to be a magic phase on the right. So when it starts with ranged, it goes to melee in the middle, and then magic on the right. So right in the line, ranged, melee, magic, in a horizontal line from right to left. I like to call this the sampler rotation because it starts with one of everything. Environmental, ranged, melee, mage, and then ranged again, but only this is on the south side. Now following this is going to be a rough transition to mage. Now by rough I mean you've got to be quick with this one, because it starts hitting you right away, as you can see there. And then this is kind of a short phase, but as soon as it's over, run straight west and switch your gear for a phase that's weak to magic that is environmental. By the way, all the environmental phases are weak to magic. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier. There is no magic phase that is environmental. But following that environmental phase is a ranged phase. I personally have the preference of keeping my prayer set for what the next phase is going to be. If I don't need prayer for that phase, I'll just pray what the next phase needs to be. Some people prefer to pray magic though, because it helps with the snakelings. For me, it depends. Alright, so following the double use of magic in the environmental phase, followed by the ranged phase, say you don't get the kill, like always, by that time, let's see what the extended kill looks like. So the environmental phase happens, and then the ranged phase happens. I personally like to stand as south as possible, right next to this venom, and I just begin attacking it. Now as soon as the venom cloud disappears, that's when I throw on Protect from Magic and run to the left side of the horseshoe all the way north and get ready for this magic phase. And you've even got a little bit of time to switch before you move if you want to, before the boss can attack you, because you're safe spotted there. Now this magic phase eventually turns environmental. I know I said no magic phase does environmental stuff, but no blue magic phase is entirely environmental, I should say. But after the mage snake starts doing environmental stuff, get ready, leave your protect from mage on if you have the prayer for it, because it's going to be a Jad phase, and since it's starting on the left hand eastern side, it opens with a magic attack and then alternates back and forth from there until it's dead. And if you fail to kill it, then it will be another magic phase in the center. I've been looking for like 5 minutes now, and I swear there was another type of rotation, but I guess that's all of them, guys. So, as a summary, follow those guides for where to stand and where to be, and what environmental cues you can follow to know what rotation you're on and what gear to wear. And remember, you'll always want to be wearing your mage gear during the range phase, and you want to be protecting range during the range phase. So when you're protecting range, you should be maging. Use mage for the melee phase as well. Use ranged for the magic phase, and use mage for the Jad phase. I'll place some guides that are more into the gear setups down in the comments below, so those of you who are just starting your Zulrah grinds can find the information you need, and hopefully for those of you who are colorblind, this information was useful to you. And if you feel like it, let me know what you think with all the little buttons and boxes down below. Peace.
Dude, this video was motherfucking trash, homie. I'm not gonna lie, this video's garbage, but I mean, like, fuck it, dude. I don't know.